Greetings cunts and welcome another episode of the ChockaBlocka show. There's only one thing worth talking about on today's episode and that's guns. Last week, a mass shooting in a high school in Florida resulted in 17 people dead. It happened on Thursday, but I didn't want to include it in the show simply because we were still getting the facts, so it was way too early to make an episode about it. Now that it is Monday, it's time for you apologists desperately clinging to your guns to learn what it is like to live in this grand utopia that is simply a country that outright banned the personal ownership of guns without a license. That's right, it's time for you to learn what it is like to live in literally any other civilized Western society that isn't America. Because I fucking live here and therefore know the most about it, I am of course going to be talking about Australia. I am not the first nor will I be the last to bring up my country as the shining example of gun control actually working. See, in 1996 we had something known forevermore as the Port Arthur Massacre. It was perpetrated by a cunt named Martin Bryant, who was mentally fucked up in every way possible. After he was arrested, it turned out that he had an IQ of 66, which by comparison was lower than 90% of 11-year-olds. Martin Bryant was intellectually disabled. So when the gun nuts in America yell about mass shootings being a mental disability problem, they're right. Most if not all mass shootings are committed by those who have a mental disability of some sort. But those who voted for the orange clown in the White House are no longer allowed to use this excuse when said clown decided to revoke gun checks for people with mental illnesses, possibly just by virtue of it being an Obama-era legislation. Australia continues to have mentally disabled and full deranged individuals in society, but we have not had any major problems like the ones that America is continuously having. But that's where the similarities between Australia's history of mass shootings stop and the differences begin. In half a year after the shooting at Port Arthur, Australia passed legislation that outright banned guns altogether. Since April 1996, we have had 13 mass murders, however that includes arson attacks, 2 sieges, family murders and a bikini gang war. However, we have had 0 mass shootings. Since April 1996, America has had 76 mass shootings alone. I bring up these numbers because there are a lot of gun nuts who argue that our smaller population would obviously result in lower numbers of mass shootings, which is a statistically valid argument to make. However, when you make this argument, you ignore the magical properties of the number 0. 0 as a number of mass shootings doesn't give a fuck how big or small our population is compared to yours. The United States has 12 times more people living in it than Australia, so by the logic of a smaller population resulting in less mass shootings, since we have 0 shootings since '96, America would statistically have 13x 0 equals 0 shootings. Look at that, instead of 0 shootings since '96, you cunts have had 76. So the big difference is not mental health or smaller populations. The big blindingly obvious difference between Australia and the United States is that we outright ban guns from personal use, and that in order to have a gun you need to apply for a license, go through rigorous training and testing, and only then may you have a gun. Due to this, a very large majority of people in Australia don't have any guns with them, and those who do are usually cops or people who like to go hunting enough that they will go through the rigorous licensing and such. And finally, we have to address all the dumb cunts who, instead of calling for the removal of guns, are calling for the increased security of schools. This is the most retarded roundabout approach to the problem possible. Here in Australia, our high schools have practically fuck all security. The only thing that can be suggested as security is a tall-ass fence that's it. But even then, the fence is usually left wide open in multiple areas so people can come and go whenever the fuck they want. This is so that people in year 12 who had their last period of the day free could leave and go home early to study if they so choose, or those with something like a doctor's appointment can return to school halfway through the day. What the primarily gun nut imbeciles continue to advocate for are things like metal detectors, alarm systems, security guards patrolling the school. What an absolute fucking joke of an idea that is. Schools are learning environments, but having all that shit that is suggested here would easily make it feel overwhelmingly like a prison. This is the utopia that I live in compared to the open war zone that is the United States of Americans. Simply by getting rid of our guns and only allowing to those who have passed extensive and rigorous testing, we have not had a single mass shooting in the past 20 years, and our schools need only a fence. That's the kind of sensible shit the dumb cunts are missing out on. Oh, and our kids are still very much alive, whereas your high school kids and even your primary school kids might actually be dead. Frankly, I do not expect anything to change in America since, the Republicans blocked everything after the Sandy Hook shooting. And, a lot of congressmen are getting ass-fucked by the NRA. Well, this is just about where we end the day's episode. If you liked the show, hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. Remember, the schedule is that every Mondays and Thursdays I record the show and upload it every Tuesdays and Fridays, so until Friday I'll catch you cunts later.